This episode is going to have a little bit of a bite.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day. Whether you're watching the show on YouTube, wherever you're downloading your podcast, the show is always free, and the show always appreciates your support. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms will apply. All right, this guy right here, he makes me work harder than I want to because he's smart and he keeps me on my toes. And when he's not talking about college football or doing his own musings with the Arledge podcast or scribing over there on USC.com, he teaches at Oxford and he works in the trial courtroom. So the host and panel member of Inside the Trojan Huddle, get back real soon, Greg Cat, Chris Arledge from WeRC.com is joining us for this episode. How are you, Chris?
Great, Mark. I'm pumped up. I didn't know there was going to be bite. Now that I know there's going to be bite, I can't wait to get started.
Dude, this show is made for you. So it's all about you today.
All right.
So let's get started right off the bat. How many times is USC going to catch the freaking bouquet? I mean, because winning the silver medal, it sucks. It looks nice, it's shiny, but you're still the first person to lose in the race. So before we get to the part of the show where we're going to say whose fault it is, we're going to do that in the next segment. What happened in USC's latest recruiting faux pas? Riley Pettyjohn, top 50 player, one of the top linebackers in the country, picked Ohio State over USC. What happened?
Hey, don't knock second place finishes. It got Marv Levy to the Hall of Fame. I think he is in the Hall of Fame, right?
I believe it is.
Look, Alex Grinch did. Right now, Lincoln Riley is paying the price for his inexcusable decision to first bring Alex Grinch over when he should have known by then what type of coach he was, and then hold on to him for another year. He's paying the price. If you listen to what the Pettyjohns had to say,
yep,
they love the new USC coaching staff. They thought that everybody did a great job recruiting their son. They're impressed by the university. And contrary to what everybody wants to say, they said the NIL offer was good, but they felt more comfortable at Ohio State. And when they asked Riley, well, I think Scott Schrader asked him, well, right, what did you need? He said, win some more games. If you're talking about a top 50 player from out of state, you're talking about somebody who didn't grow up wanting to go to USC, but was open to it, right? You're trying to sell him on the future, and his future livelihood is at stake.
Right.
We saw plenty of 4- and 5-star players come play for Clay Helton at USC and not develop, get picked up in the 5th round. And every single one of those kids probably thinks if he would have gone and played for Nick Saban, he would have been picked up in the 1st round. Maybe he would have been right, and he would have played in much bigger games. And so if you're a top 50 player, if you have that type of ability, you expect that you're going to be a high NFL draft choice in a few years. And if that's what you're looking for, you want to go somewhere where, one, you're going to get developed, and two, you're going to play in those big high-profile games and win a lot of them. And I think the Pettyjohns figure if their son goes to Ohio State, that he is going to be developed. He is going to win a lot of football games. He is going to be in the college football playoff, maybe every year he's there. And while they think what's going on at USC is good and it's moving in the right direction, I don't think they're sold that it's the same level, that they can have the same confidence level. And I don't know how we blame them for feeling that way.
Absolutely. They're looking, well, Riley is specifically looking for proof of concept. The mom and dad, they were on board. The USC checked off all the boxes. They were willing to take the risk, so to speak, but they let Riley make the ultimate final decision. And to your point, Ohio State has been putting out quality product on the field. They develop linebackers. They have a defense proof of concept that they can say, hey, look, You're going to step into this, and you don't have to wait to see it. Again, USC's selling their vision. So, again, USC's close, but until they see it happen, this is going to be, we'll call it the vicious circle that they're in. And again, it goes back to even bringing Alex Grinch for the first year. We'll give Lincoln Riley the benefit of the doubt. You got to keep your close circle close. You're starting over. You don't got a lot of time. Work with what you got. But it was after that. It was that gut feeling that holding on to him. That's where we're at. Everybody can blame everybody else. But going from 11-1 to 11-3, and then to 8-5, I think that's what people are questioning right now.
Yeah, look, Mark, we were here doing these types of shows when the Riley announcement was made.
Yep.
And we talked about what everybody else talked about. This is one of the elite offensive coaches in college football, maybe the elite offensive coach in college football. Incredible with quarterbacks. We figured that he would have a quarterback come over and win the Heisman Trophy. He did.
Right.
And we all said, the question is whether Lincoln Riley can fix his defense, because he hadn't been able to do it at Oklahoma. Everybody knew that was a challenge in front of him. Lincoln Riley must have known that was a challenge in front of him. And he brought over a coach that he should have already known wouldn't cut it. He had him 3 years at OU. We only put up with Alex Grinch for 2 years. He was Lincoln Riley 3 before he came to USC in the first place. And then we have the utter collapse that season defensively, and you bring him back and you waste an offense that scored 42 points a game.
Right.
I mean, the offense was not as consistent as we would have liked. And there were some things that offensively we didn't love. We didn't run the ball enough, didn't protect the passer as well as we wanted to. I know all that. The offense scored over 40 points a game. And in most of those games against top competition, the offense was putting points on the board. Right. Lincoln Riley threw away his second year, all of the momentum he had built up, and a fair amount of his reputation, because he made a move that was so stupid that I can't believe he made it. Now, I hesitate to say these things, Mark, because I know we're going to have OU fans that are going to tune in merely so they can mock USC, and that's fine. But the reality is that's what happened. And you don't get that back in one offseason of good hires, which he's done. Great hires, I think.
I was just going to say, you learn by making mistakes. I think he was humbled. He learned. We're hoping he learned from that mistake of keeping Alex Grinch for a year too long. If it's true that he, made the corrections, they invested in this defensive coaching staff, and which leads me to my next question. What happens if USC is 3-0? How quickly does the narrative change? Because 3-0 includes beating LSU and winning on the road in Ann Arbor.
Yeah. If USC is 3-0, they're going to be in the top 5, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of momentum in terms of the press, in terms of USC fans, and in terms of recruiting.
Exactly.
Right. So if that's what happened, look, I think the defense is going to be much improved. I do. And while they still don't have the defensive roster that they ultimately would like to have, they do not have a Georgia defensive roster. I think they have enough players on this team that they can play competent, sound defense and play well most of the time and get stops, right? Occasionally get stops. It's been years since we've seen that.
Right.
I think they'll be able to do that. And so if they do that, and if the offense comes together, and Lincoln Riley's offenses usually do, then they're going to be very competitive in both those games. You win those 2 games, and you are off to the races. And there is and some of these guys may reconsider what they're doing with their recruiting. And at the very least, 2026 is going to be very excited about USC. If you give up 48 to LSU in the opener, I don't think that's going to happen. So those first few games are hugely important, and those two games are about as challenging as you're going to find.
I agree. Now, last question before we segue into the next segment. Your thoughts on the way USC is approaching their recruiting. And I'm talking national versus local. For instance, you've got a Southern California linebacker considered one of the best, Noah McHale. He's going to Texas A&M. And then you've got one of the best linebackers in Texas choosing Ohio State over USC and both the Texas schools. What's going on here? Why can't USC get the best in their state to stay home, and they're willing to go to College Station and yada? Look, without repeating myself, go on.
Yeah. So my biggest frustration with USC recruiting right now is that they haven't been able to lock down California. Now, it may very well be that Lincoln Riley thinks there are better prospects to be found in Texas, Florida, Georgia, and other places, and maybe he's right about that. At the same time, it's hard to pull guys out of those states. You need to lock down the best guys in your state first, and then you can go after the others. There are some positions they're going to have to do that, right? They're not going to get stud defensive tackles in Southern California most years. They're going to have to go to the Deep South for that. But there are positions that you can lock down, and I'm not sure they've been doing it. I'm frustrated by it a little bit. Because what Lincoln Riley is trying to do is something that no USC coach before him has ever done, which is build a roster that is at least 50% or more from outside of California. McKay didn't do it. Robinson didn't do it. Pete Carroll didn't do it. I'm not a thundering herd expert. We'd have to get Greg Katz on the line, but I'm pretty sure that their original national championship winning teams were built on California kids too. So you have to be able to lock those guys down. And that USC has allowed Oregon to become the preeminent recruiting program on the West Coast is a terrible development, just terrible. It needs to be fixed.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the next segment. In fact, we've gone from, remember when you used to have the title of recruiting coordinator? Now the new title apparently is general manager. We're going to talk about that next. Hold on one second here, though. I'm sure a lot of you grew up spending time in the Major League ballpark, watching baseball games. I was at Dodger Stadium. Chris, where'd you go? What was your Major League Baseball park?
Dodger Stadium.
There you go. He's a Dodger fan too. So we were doing that before the games were really expensive, before you saw all that corporate logo out there on the blue walls. Well, you know what? With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect before you arrive. And with all-in prices, they'll show you your total up front. That way, you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. And you're buying your tickets in seconds. 2 taps, and you are done. USC fans, have you gotten your tickets for Vegas yet? We're 55 days away now? Game Time has tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. So if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, they'll credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKED like David ON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so I talked about the end of the segment there. Chris, right now, the new blame game. We found someone new to blame. It's hitting the airwaves. It's all over WeAreSC.com. USC's general manager, it's his fault. It's knocking on his door, on Dave Emmerich's door. He wears the title of program general manager. And just so everybody understands, this is what his duties include: roster management, scholarship numbers, evaluating and identifying talent, helping hire and retain coaching and support staff, stuff like that. Plus, NIL is also a big part of it. But when it comes to NIL, he's the guy who delivers the NIL message to the recruits, okay? In other words, it's a message that comes from the conversations that the recruits are having with the coaching staff and House of Victory. So in other words, he's a messenger. He's the middleman. Well, I'm trying to understand. Maybe you can help me. Maybe I'm just dumb. How is it his fault that USC is the bridesmaid in all these recruiting battles?
Help me out with this, Mark. Did Dave Emmerich sign a 10-year deal worth about $12 million a year?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Then let's look to the guy who did that. He's the one ultimately responsible for the program. He's the one that's going to get the credit when USC wins. He's the one that's going to get the blame when USC's not playing well, as it should be. No, this is not an Emmerich thing. And the truth is, I'm not convinced this is all an NIL thing. There's some aspect of that, right? Oregon's not doing what they're doing without fantastic NIL. But even at Oregon, you have a coaching staff that is a fantastic recruiting staff, right? Sure. And we said that at the very beginning when Lanning was brought over. We looked at his hires and said, that is a whole room of fantastic used car salesmen, and they are fantastic salesmen. And Oregon has played pretty good football for the most part the last few years. So even there, it's not just the money. They do have other things that are going on. I don't think it makes any sense to blame Emmerich. I think this is silly. Here's the thing, USC fans. If you're a USC fan, it makes no sense to you that somebody who could play football at USC would choose somewhere else, right? It makes no sense to you. But there are all kinds of other programs that are quality programs. Yes, if a kid chooses to go to Texas A&M instead of USC, I'll probably make fun of him a little bit because that's a strange place to choose. But there are all kinds of places you can go and play football and play it well. If a kid decides to play football at Ohio State, it's kind of silly for us to say, oh, there can't be a legitimate reason why a kid would choose to go to Ohio State to play football. Emmerich must have dropped the ball. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't understand where people are coming from on this.
Yeah, neither do I. And I've been trying to ask for some specificity, saying, look, tell me exactly where he dropped the ball, because I'm giving his job duties. And it just doesn't sound like he's the decision maker in which recruit is getting $500K or whatever number we're talking about. I don't know. It just seems like, well, maybe if he played video games better with the guys or related better. Again, you talked about it. Lincoln Riley is in charge of recruiting. If the general manager's job is to identify the best talent and get that over to the coaching staff, at a certain point, the coaching staff does the recruiting. Who closes the deal?
Look, have you ever heard of a high school kid choosing where he's going to go play his college ball based on who the general manager is? Have you ever had somebody, you know what? I'm really having a hard time choosing between Georgia and Alabama because I love both GMs so much. This is silly. USC fans are saying a lot of silly things these days. I get it. I've said some silly things. It's been years since I've done it, but I've done it. This is not a Dave Emmerich problem. I don't even know how good Emmerich is at his job. I have no idea. He may be great. He may be average. I have no idea. But I know this. Riley Pettyjohn didn't choose Ohio State because Dave Emmerich didn't do a good enough job doing his thing. That's just silly. And I'll go a step further and say it certainly appears that USC's recruiting staff is on the ball, right? I mean, they seem to be exceptionally well organized. They do a really good job of selling the strengths of the university in addition to the football program. They're great with the parents. I don't think this is a staff issue at all. No. And blaming Dave Emmerich because a kid who, by the way, is not a lifelong USC fan and is not from Southern California, chose to go to another program, which happens to be a top 4 program in the country. It doesn't mean Dave Emmerich dropped the ball. Blaming Emmerich for this is like if somebody blames my paralegal because I lose a case. It just doesn't make any sense.
Right. Look, we're all frustrated. We've watched the spring transfer portal come and go. USC did not find those needs that Lincoln Riley spoke about that they needed to help solidify the interior defense. Again, it's not that USC wasn't aggressive, but they weren't going to overpay. And I don't care what argument someone tries to make. The general manager does not determine how much and who gets what. That's not his job. It just does.
Nobody in that program is making any decision apart from Lincoln Riley. They're not. It's his call. And look, I've been critical of Riley, and I think rightly so. But I want people to understand this doesn't mean that I don't think he can't be successful.
Thank you.
Pete Carroll and Nick Saban were not elite coaches in their early 40s either. They weren't. That happened later. Has Lincoln Riley learned what he needs to learn? We're going to find out this season. He's certainly not only talking the talk, but he's hiring exactly the type of staff you'd want to hire. And I'll go a step further. He's hiring the type of staff you didn't think he could possibly hire.
Absolutely.
Antonlynn, yes. I figured he could land a guy like that. But to get to get Matt Ince to come and play and be a linebackers coach.
Crazy.
Stunning. To land Coach Henney on the defensive line. I mean, that's a fantastic hire. Doug Belk is an unbelievable coach. These are superstar hires, and Lincoln Riley did that. All right. So, I mean, he's going to get criticism when he does silly things like keep Alex Grinch around, but we're also going to praise him for that. And I think it's going to make a huge difference this season. This is a tough schedule. I'm not saying USC is going to win 11 games against this schedule. What I am saying is we're going to see a completely different defense on the field, even if there are some spots where they don't have the depth of talent you would want. They're going to line up, they're going to play hard, they're going to know their assignments, and they're going to be fundamentally sound. I know that because I look at that coaching staff and say, that's what a coaching staff like that can deliver for you. And if they deliver that and stick around, we're going to see something different recruiting-wise next year. But there is a price to be paid for making the decision that Lincoln Riley made. There's a price to be paid for throwing away Caleb Williams last year at USC. And Lincoln Riley and USC are paying that price right now.
And when you compound that with everything that happened prior to his arrival,
yep,
it's a mountain to keep climbing. Yep. So I think they're heading in the right direction. We pointed out they've made the financial resources in the infrastructure. They've got their new football-only facility being built. They invested highly in Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley went back to Genco and said, I need more. I need a defensive coaching staff. You're seeing they're chipping away at the recruiting trail. They got some nice blue chip guys in their last class. They're gaining the interest in this class. Now it's a matter of these guys just want to say, all right, you know what? Show me. Just show me, and we'll give you even more attention.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these recruits this year want to see whether there's stability at the program, right? Because it's one thing to get Coach Henney to come over for a year and do what he does. And he wows everybody that he recruits, even if they don't choose USC. But I think a lot of recruits are wondering whether Coach Henney is going to be here this year, this coming year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And we don't know the answer to that. But if Lincoln Riley continues to make great defensive hires, then that's fine. Nobody worried at Alabama whether Nick Saban's secondaries coach was going to leave, right? Because it's Nick Saban, and he'll hire somebody else great to fill that spot, and and defense will still be a critical part of what they do, and they're still going to coach it well, right? Lincoln Riley has to get to that point where the question is no longer, can he get Coach Henney to stick around, which I hope he does. But even if Coach Henney leaves, we know that Lincoln Riley will replace him with another superstar coach because USC cares about defense and coaches it up every single year. But that sort of credibility takes time to build.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We got one more segment coming up. Here we go. All right. We touched on it a little bit earlier in the show, talking about, how Oregon's recruiting has picked up the pace over their history. But I tend to disagree with you a little bit here. How much is Phil willing to spend on a championship? And shouldn't the waterfowl shouldn't their fan base just kind of own it right now and say, look, yeah, Phil's on his deathbed. He's opened up his checkbook and just say, yeah, we own it, instead of just saying, Lanning he's a recruiting beast. Yes, he's got a good recruiting staff, but you're not getting guys like DeCorian Moore from the state of Texas without giving the biggest check out there. I'm sorry, you're just not.
Yeah, no. I agree with that. I think most Oregon fans would agree that NIL is an important component of what they're doing. I agree with you completely on that. I guess my point was this: it's not just cash, although that's a huge part of it, and that opens some doors. But Oregon has, for the better part of a decade or two, been the best branding program, the best marketing program in the country, right?
Sure.
And look, you're talking about professionals whose primary job is to figure out how young people, primarily young men, will buy a product. That's what Nike does, right? The whole idea behind the company is we're going to find a way to make young men excited about a product. They are the world's experts at doing that. And And Oregon football has made, I hate the brand. I hate it. I can't even describe how much I hate it. But kids don't. And kids all over the country see that Oregon brand and the flash and the stupid, ugly uniforms. They see all this stuff and they get excited. So, yes, it's not just cash. There's also a lot of flash that they've been building for many years. And then they went out and brought in a group of coaches who are, I think, far better recruiters than they are coaches, but they're fantastic recruiters. The combination of those three things has turned them into a recruiting juggernaut. That being said, when USC has its act together, they beat Oregon on the recruiting trail. USC is paying the price for their recent mistakes and their recent incompetence, especially pre-Riley, where the incompetence was like over the top. They're still paying the price for that. But a USC that is running on all cylinders with good leadership will beat Oregon on the recruiting trail, and they'll beat them on the field.
Well, I hope so. Like I said, I think for me, because I'm more of a traditionalist, when I see a program like Oregon trying to buy their way into the blue blood realm, number one, you can't do that. Number two, you're ruining the game. You're taking college football and you're making it more and more and more like the NFL. And the closer we get to the NFL, the further away I think the fans' passionate interest is going to be in the game.
Yeah, well, no, you're right, because for the same reason that AAA baseball is not a competitor of Major League Baseball. If it's the pros, you might as well watch the highest level of play. I think some of this is going to get hashed out, Mark. I mean, I really do think that they're going to come up with enforceable rules at some point in the next few years, probably through Congress, probably. We'll see. But you know that I'm up there on the list of people who can't stand Oregon and what they're doing to college football. I can't stand it. I'm just giving credit where credit is due. It's not just money. Texas A&M is just money. It's an underachiever program. It's a weird school. They never win anything. It's just money. Oregon, though, is money and marketing and a good recruiting coaching staff. That's really all they have to offer. I don't know if they have any books in their library, but they have that.
Yeah, like I said, I told you the show was going to have some bite to it, so I agree. There's another program out there that uses the same two initials. Both fan bases tend to think they were born on third base, or they say act like they were born on third base, but they're not. So let's talk about Oklahoma fans, because they watch this show. They also watch the Inside the Trojan Huddle show. And on one of our past episodes, you were quite critical of Lincoln Riley, and that caught their attention. My question is this: how much more could Oklahoma fan hate USC and Lincoln Riley? Imagine this: if Oklahoma and Texas had joined the Pac-12 and everything stayed the same, and eventually USC hired Lincoln Riley away from Oklahoma, what would have happened to that state that you live in or that you visit?
I mean, I try not to visit very often. I just go there for my gold. Look, I know Oklahoma fans very, very well. There are a lot of Oklahoma fans in North Texas, but my grandfather grew up on a farm in Oklahoma. My ex-wife is from Oklahoma. My parents used to live there. I know Oklahoma fans really well. Here's what I'll say about Oklahoma fans: they're barely better than Oregon fans. And while look, it's true, and in part that's because Oklahoma fans are so used to winning, and they've been winning for years. At Oklahoma, unlike Oregon, Oklahoma is a legitimate blue blood program, right?
Absolutely.
And so fans that win a lot tend to get spoiled, and they tend to get entitled, and they tend to look down on everybody else. That's what OU fans do. And so I don't much like OU fans. I'm not sure that anybody outside of Oklahoma likes OU fans. Oklahoma has their own issues to worry about, though. I mean, I'm glad they're enjoying watching Lincoln Riley struggle. And I wouldn't blame them. If I were them, I would too. But have they noticed that OU hasn't played all that? OU has not played better defensively since Venables has been there than they did when Riley was there. Look at the numbers. Even this past year, which was a better season, I think they were around number 50 in scoring defense and in the 60s in total defense. They have been mediocre defensively since Brent Venables arrived. That's not what they expected. And they've had one okay season and one disastrous season. Oklahoma fans, you got your own issues to worry about. And when I said that Lincoln Riley's making mistakes that elite coaches don't make, I mentioned names like Nick Saban, Pete Carroll, Urban Meyer. You guys don't have a Nick Saban, Pete Carroll, or Urban Meyer running your program either. Not even close. And I like Venables. I like his energy. I liked it when he was at Clemson and he's like a toddler who'd run out in the field, so they had to grab him and pull him back. He's fun, but he's not an elite coach. And right now, OU is not an elite program.
Oklahoma's best era that can compare to USC's Pete Carroll dynasty, and you could probably say it was even better, was the Bud Wilkinson when they won 47 in a row. They've got a lot of history.
Yeah.
With that said, Oklahoma fan needs to remember, Brent Venables was the defensive coordinator under Bob Stoops when USC dropped 55 points on them in the Orange Bowl.
I didn't realize they had a defensive coordinator in that game.
And that's the person they brought back to be their new head coach.
Look, here's the thing. We're both in agreement. Oklahoma's a top 5 program of all time.
Without a doubt.
And all the people that are saying Oklahoma can't compete at the SEC, I don't think that's true. I'm not sure they will this year. But Oklahoma can. It's a great program with great history. It's got great support. But OU fan, you guys are not better off than USC is right now. What you have is an offense that scored a lot of points last year, and a defense that was okay. USC will have at least an okay defense this year with this coaching staff. I don't think you're any better off than we are right now. I think Oklahoma will be okay, just like I think USC will be okay. But right now they're not that great. Last I saw, you getting whacked by Arizona. I don't know. I mean, Arizona pulled in a bunch of 2 and 3 stars. That's all they had, and they smacked you guys in a bowl game. So I enjoy it if you want, OU fan, but I don't know what you guys have to talk about right now. I haven't seen it.
I'll tell you what, I'll make both fan bases happy and looking forward to the season. Let's hope they're seated against each other in the first round of the playoffs.
I love it.
Yeah, then we can talk and then we'll settle the score. All right. That's it for this episode. We can go on for longer, but we both have better things to do, and I don't have better things to do.
And by the way, I see that my Twitter or my X, I just joined today. I literally have never posted. So if you go there expecting something witty, you're not going to find it. I mean, you may never find it, but I don't have anything up there yet.
If you want to find witty and hear witty from Chris, where can everybody find you when you're not helping me out here on the show?
So, as you mentioned, Inside the Trojans Huddle, we do once a week. I'm the guest host. I'm usually a participant when Katz is around. I write more during the season than not, musings from Arledge on We Are SC. I also have a musings from Arledge Substack account where I put all my stuff that is not college football related. Okay. So if you're interested in that, or if you just want to hire me to be your litigation counsel, you can do that. We'll talk on the phone all the time. I'll charge you by the hour for it, but it'll be fun.
Chris, thank you so much for doing this. We'll have you back on again when we get into the season. We'll see where we're at. Everybody, thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen every day. When you're done making this show your first listen, your first watch, get on over there to wearesc.com. We still have that subscription special going on, and we got a lot of written content. So you want to keep updated on recruiting? What I'm not giving you, you get over there. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.